There were certain narratives that I had come to believe about Islam, and because I didn't know a Muslim, there was this sense of nervousness when it came to Camille, because Muslims were so otherized in my mind.
The Jewish community has had such a visceral response to the Islamophobia that's happening, because we know this language and we hear this language and we've been attuned to this language. And if there's any lesson to be learned from Jewish history for the world, I think it's that when we start speaking poorly of people, when we start demonizing groups of people, otherizing groups of people, we can say we'll wash our hands of it, that it's just rhetoric, but we know that the fringier characters respond to this with violence.
Islam is taken to be a religion of terror, a religion of hate, and it has history.
On Monday, an act of terror wounded dozens and killed 3 innocent people at the Boston Marathon.
For Camille, the first time I actually sat through one of his sermons was the Friday after the Boston bombing. At that point, our friendship had grown to where there was a stronger sense of trust. But I was really curious to say, what is he going to say to his mosque after this event? Because a couple of years earlier, there was still this concern that while most Muslims don't outwardly support terrorism, that there was this belief that secretly they're okay with it.
Muslim scholars have spoken, hundreds of them, saying that ISIS's understanding of Islam is faulty.
Kamal Hadoush says a letter spewing hate recently arrived at his mosque.
It breaks my heart that we are perpetuating hatred and fear and ignorance. And we're doing it believing that we're doing the right thing. And we're doing it oftentimes saying the words, well, I really love my enemy, which is a bunch of bunk, because the tone of our voice and the rhetoric we're using and the lack of action betrays us.
If religion is misused, it can be a force for war and evil and hatred. I mean, there's no question about that. But to be fair, it can also be a force of good, love, and peace, harmony and understanding as well.
So I ended up in a conversation with a dear friend right after the Orlando shootings. And she was pushing back on me a little bit about how I could be standing with the Muslim community at a time when she felt the Muslim community had some guilt. And she looked at me and she said, there's just no way that any of us can ever address these issues straight on with a Muslim. And I looked back here and I said, well, I've talked about this with Camille dozens of times, and I've talked about issues that are much more challenging than this dozens of times. And that to me is the beauty of our relationship.
One of the questions that we had at one of the forums that we did was, can you be a Muslim and still be a loyal American? And it perhaps wasn't my best response, because I said, it's almost an offensive question. When Camille has people in his mosque that have a Purple Heart because they've been wounded in action serving our country.
Relationship first, and coming together, seeing the humanity of the other, and then dealing with difference. I think it's a model that can work in all sorts of places.
There's just so much that we have to learn and discover that we would just never know if we only go to the circles that we already go to get our information. And at some point we have to step out.